when you look at the BRICS talking about a gold-backed system, the expansion of the Shanghai Metals Exchange, how important gold is. They said last year they agreed in principle to a settlement currency called the unit, which was 40% gold-backed and redeemable. They're going to do it. I think someone told Trump, we need to do it, because since November, the amount of gold coming into this country is off the charts. I mean, really off the charts. I don't know if you noticed, but just the first 3 days of this August contract, 20,126 contracts stood for delivery.
Yeah.
100% of all the contracts that were posted stood for delivery. Now, I know you remember most of your career, most of my career, less than 1% of contracts stood for delivery. And now 100% of them have stood for delivery in the first 3 days. That's $7 billion worth of gold standing for delivery. And a lot of it's leaving the ecosystem. It's loading out of COMEX. Over $100 billion in gold has come in since November that we know of through the COMEX. Who the hell's buying it all?
The possibility of a gold revaluation in the United States is no longer a fringe discussion. With Scott Bessent now serving as Treasury Secretary, the signals coming out of Washington suggest that gold is once again being considered as a pillar of fiscal and monetary strategy. Judy Shelton, long associated with calls for a return to sound money, has openly floated the idea of issuing Treasury Trust Bonds tied to gold, potentially as early as July 4, 2026, the 250th anniversary of American independence. The symbolism is deliberate, a declaration of economic renewal backed by the one asset that has anchored monetary systems for millennia. Andy Schectman points to staggering amounts of physical gold quietly being drawn out of COMEX since last November. Over $100 billion worth of gold has moved, with delivery percentages far exceeding historic norms. For decades, less than 1% of contracts stood for delivery. Now, we're seeing 100% fulfillment in certain contract months. The obvious question is, who is buying all this gold? The secrecy and scale strongly suggest that it is not hedge funds or private investors. The possibility that the U.S. government itself is behind this accumulation cannot be ignored. If Washington is indeed the hidden buyer, the motivation becomes clearer in light of Shelton's proposals. A revaluation of gold, coupled with the issuance of 50-year Treasury Trust Bonds convertible into gold at maturity, would provide the U.S. with both credibility and flexibility. By repegging debt issuance to gold, the Treasury could effectively reset its balance sheet, reduce its debt burden through dollar devaluation, and regain the confidence of both domestic savers and foreign creditors. For investors, such a policy would almost certainly propel gold to unprecedented levels, with silver likely to outperform in relative terms given its historic volatility and industrial demand. The potential bullish impact for precious metals cannot be overstated. A revaluation would not be a minor adjustment, but rather a wholesale repricing of gold and silver to reflect their true monetary role in a fractured global system. With BRICS already advancing gold-backed alternatives to the dollar, and the U.S. possibly preparing its own countermove, the stage is set for a reordering of global finance. If Bessent and Shelton push forward with these ideas, July 2026 could mark the beginning of a new era, one in which gold is not just a hedge, but once again the bedrock of America's economic future. And as Andy Schectman reveals in his discussion with Andrew Maguire, the signs of this strategy are already in motion. Stay with us as we explore the evidence, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the coming chapters of this unfolding story.
Okay, here's my thesis in a nutshell. You know, little by little, the name of my show, well, little by little, all of a sudden, stable coins are everywhere. Where the hell were they 2 years ago? No one knew stable coins. Trump was saying, Jamie Dimon was saying that crypto's a scam. And why would and now all of a sudden, bam, right in your face, little by little, then all at once, stable coins are everywhere. You're going to see corporations around the globe issuing stable coins. JP Morgan just announced a partnership with Coinbase, and they're going to allow the bank accounts to link with your crypto account, and you can trade your Chase points that you got for using your credit card into stable coins right through Coinbase, which will be linked one-to-one or real damn close to it to U.S. Treasuries. The issuance of all of these stable coins and saying it's much easier and much quicker and blah, 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 okay, that's true. But I believe that Bessent, who said we're going to go very big on stable coins, up to $2 trillion a year, will be used to load the front end of the yield curve. up to 2-year duration in Treasury, low rates, but the constant use of these stable coins will do just that. Now, what happens to the back end? The back end, to me, will be backed by gold. Now, Judy Shelton said to me on my show with her, and she's been saying it again lately, that July 4th next year, 2026, is a big day for Trump, a huge day, and it's the 250th anniversary of the country. And she said, Andy, he will issue gold-backed treasuries at that point, redeemable in gold. And I said, Judy, do you think gold will be revalued? It's held in the gold revaluation account. And not in so many words. She said, yes. Now, when we're done with this, I want to get your opinion on what you think about gold revaluation. But James Rickards comes up with a number of near 24,000. He does that by dividing the money supply into the gold. And well, if that happened, I'm just saying if it did, that would give the Treasury general account about $6 trillion free and clear, as every $4,000 increase would give the Treasury $1 trillion. Every $4,000 increase gives the Treasury $1 trillion free and clear. They would issue those certificates to the Fed, who would print the money out of thin air and give the money to the Treasury. Now, the certificates and the gold that they hold only gives credit or claim on the dollar value of the gold, not the gold itself. That belongs to the American people. So that it's an accounting gimmick. But the printing of all of that money in James' case would devalue the dollar by over 60%. So you destroy the value of the dollar. You're purposely doing it. How do you pay $28 trillion in come due treasuries with $15 trillion in revenue? You don't. You destroy the value of the dollar. You inflate the crap out of it. And you devalue the dollar. Now, he wants a weak dollar. We've seen it fall already. But why? Because he wants to bring back manufacturing. So if you destroy the value of the dollar, you devalue the hell out of it. You push gold way up and back it to the Treasury, as Judy says will happen next year, July 4th. Who knows if she's right or not? I think she is. So you got the stable coins running the front end of the market, $2 trillion a year running the government spending. The back end of the market is pegged to gold at zero coupon, zero interest rate bonds, redeemable in gold at a much higher price, because the more stupid we are with fiscal and monetary policy, the higher the price of gold goes. That is your inflation hedge. So you have zero borrowing costs on the back end, a massively devalued dollar because they revalue gold, which is held in the gold revaluation account. Everyone's talking about it all of a sudden. I've been talking about it for over a year now that they're going to do this. And so you devalue the dollar. You have a zero borrowing costs on the back end. Now you can bring back your manufacturing at zero borrowing costs and a devalued dollar, which helps you sell your goods across the globe in a very competitive manner. In essence, soft defaulting on the U.S. dollar reserve standard in an effort to bring demand into the U.S. Treasury that is trustless. It's backed by gold, redeemable in gold. And Judy said they'll issue stable coins off of those too. So now you got all these stable coins funding the government, the back end of the bond market, zero interest rates, so that you can bring back manufacturing and have a noble attempt at growing our way out of a problem where we have zero shot in hell otherwise. As my mentor, Richard Russell, used to say, the Fed 20 years ago was trapped they would inflate or default. How about this? I'll have zero borrowing costs to bring all your manufacturing back, a devalued dollar, no reserve standard, but still the supreme power in the world, because we now can grow our way organically out of this problem over time and put people to work and give future generations hope and optimism. Because as it is now, if we don't make anything, and a lot of the low-paying white-collar jobs are gone. You know, my son works for me now, but he was a CPA at Price Waterhouse, earning $75,000 a year, analyzing balance sheets for real estate investment trusts. What the hell does Price Waterhouse need to pay that kid 80 grand to realize to analyze a balance sheet when GPT or any AI, bang, it's done. And so these kinds of jobs are gone. So you need to bring manufacturing back, not only to put people to work, but for the own national security, pharmaceuticals, aircraft parts, microchips, all this stuff. And now you actually have a shot at it.
Schectman's thesis bridges two seemingly separate developments, stablecoins on the one hand and gold revaluation on the other, into a coherent strategy. The rapid institutional embrace of stablecoins, something almost unthinkable just 2 years ago, now appears to serve a broader purpose. By anchoring short-term government funding to stablecoin flows, Washington gains a liquid and convenient mechanism to finance deficits, while positioning gold to underpin the longer end of the Treasury curve. This dual structure, front-end liquidity through digital dollars and back-end credibility through gold, would effectively give the U.S. both flexibility and stability at a time when confidence in fiat is dwindling. At the core of this framework lies the goal of reviving American industry. A deliberately weaker dollar, backed by revalued gold, would make U.S. exports competitive while ensuring that long-term borrowing costs remain negligible. As Schectman stresses, this is not simply an economic adjustment, but a national security necessity. From pharmaceuticals to microchips, the pandemic and global tensions have exposed the dangers of relying on foreign supply chains. A devalued currency, paired with zero-cost borrowing, provides a pathway for reshoring production and restoring industrial self-sufficiency.
When you look at the BRICS talking about a gold-backed system, the expansion of the Shanghai Metals Exchange, how important gold is. They said last year they agreed in principle to a settlement currency called the unit, which was 40% gold-backed and redeemable. They're going to do it. I think someone told Trump, we need to do it, because since November, the amount of gold coming into this country is off the charts. I mean, really off the charts. I don't know if you noticed, but just the first 3 days of this August contract, 20,126 contracts stood for delivery. Yeah. 100% of all the contracts that were posted stood for delivery. Now, I know you remember most of your career, most of my career, less than 1% of contracts stood for delivery. And now 100% of them have stood for delivery in the first 3 days. That's $7 billion worth of gold standing for delivery. And a lot of it's leaving the ecosystem. It's loading out of COMEX. Over $100 billion in gold has come in since November that we know of through the COMEX. Who the hell's buying it all? Why don't we know more about it? So if Judy is right, you would have to reshore your gold, get it all here, and then revalue it, and then peg it to the Treasury. And while the stablecoin bill takes care of the funding on the front end of the curve, the back end pegged to gold, zero interest rates, redeemable in gold, bring back your manufacturing, and look the world in the face, or look the United States in the face. And Trump says, look, we squandered this opportunity. It used to be great, but now it's harming us. We have no manufacturing. We need to get it back. Here's how we do it. It's going to be tough for a while. You're going to need to crawl through the tunnel of the way that Andy Dufresne in the Shawshank Redemption did to get to the other side. And that other side is we now are the epicenter of ingenuity and innovation and manufacturing like we once were, because as it is now, we're in trouble if we don't. That's my theory. Think about it. But one of the things that I found very interesting, to your point about what the BRICS are doing, Andrew, and I haven't heard a lot of people say this, is that, so they came out, China did. Now, first, the key to all this is building all these multi-jurisdictional vaults. Ask Venezuela about that. When their gold was held in the Bank of England, no, we're not going to give it to you. So now you have vaults all over the place where each country will sprinkle gold amongst these vaults in theory to spread out the jurisdictional risk. But one of the things that's interesting to me is China came out about a month ago, Andrew, and said, we have connected our bridge platform, which is in essence mBridge, to the 11 Asian countries, ASEAN, the countries in Southeast Asia. They're operational, and 5 Middle Eastern countries. Now, this represents 38% of global GDP, saying they've connected the bridge network to 38% of global GDP. It's operational. It's working, these Asian countries. And what's really, really interesting is the article that just came out of Forbes. And let me just read this to you. It says, Forbes pointed out that China is now just the third largest trade partner for the United States, and a distant third behind Mexico and Canada. In the month of May, China was less than 6% of U.S. trade, which was the lowest level in over 20 years. Then you have the Asian countries, ASEAN. Again, these are the countries Southeast Asia. And together, they have a population over twice as large as the United States, nearing 800 million people. These are also some of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world with a fast growing middle class. And this group of countries, wait for it, is now China's largest trading partner by far, way ahead of the European Union and the United States. We did 6% of trading with China. They're doing almost 20%. And they're their largest trading partner. These countries in Southeast Asia are now connected to the M bridge and settle imbalances in gold. And I said that they're going to issue it to the Belt Road Initiative. They're going to. You watch. But I just heard something. The BRICS Pay, the gentleman was being interviewed, the guy that designed it, and their CEO, and he said they are right now, this is B2B, this is retail. It's like a credit card where you can spend in any of the BRICS countries seamlessly, B2B or small bank to small bank, consumer to business, whatever, retail. He said, we are now, right now in China negotiating to roll this out on the Belt Road. And he said, and in a few years, BRICS Bridge and BRICS Pay will be connected. They're going to roll it out to the Belt Road, which is 155 countries, 75% of human population. They're going to roll it out to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They're going to roll it out to the Eurasian Economic Union. Why do I say that? Because Sergei Lavrov just came out and said, this technology settles in 7 seconds. It is free from SWIFT interference. SWIFT takes 3 to 5 days. It has a 98% reduction in fees, and we're opening it up to the rest of the world. And by the way, it's not compatible with the dollar, the pound, or the euro. They're opening it up to all of these countries. So everyone focuses on the BRICS. Not big enough, Andy. Not substantial enough, Andrew. Well, sorry for the language. I'm just simply saying, you now, if Lavrov says you open it up to 90% of human population and allow them to trade outside SWIFT on a retail level and on a central bank to central bank level with imbalances settled in gold at that level through a multi-jurisdictional set of vaults. You see, when the BIS pulled the plug at the 12th hour on Mbridge, embarrassing them the way they did, say, we can't be part of a technology that allows any country to sidestep Western sanctions, pretending that they just realized that Russia was the R in BRICS. That's what incentivized all this. So now China is taking the lead, calling it the renminbi cross-border payment system. They're setting up all of these vaults that will connect with the BRICS vault, that will connect with the vault in Dubai, that will connect with the vault in the new vault being built in St. Petersburg and Moscow. And all of these vaults will be the backbone, and it will be the renminbi cross-border payment system until maybe Trump is gone. And then bang, you bring the unit in, which they've already agreed on in principle, but the rails are done. The infrastructure is done. The technology works, and the vaulting system, which is the key to it all, because you can take possession, to your point, of gold in multi-jurisdictional vaults. The next one is under construction in Saudi Arabia, who was the 5th partner in Mbridge at the end. So they're straddling both sides of BRICS, but you can see where their allegiance is actually focused on. And instead of antagonizing Trump with this BRICS bridge, they call it the renminbi cross-border payment bridge for now. But it's the same technology as Mbridge. And Lavrov, who's Russian, and the guy who developed BRICS Pay is Russian, they're all connected. They're just not poking President Trump, and that's probably a smart thing.
The implications of this strategy stretch far beyond U.S. borders. While Washington may aim to use gold as a domestic anchor for treasuries, BRICS nations are already implementing their own gold-backed settlement mechanisms. China's multi-jurisdictional vault system, the development of Mbridge, and the expansion of gold-settled trade within Asia and the Middle East all point to a world steadily moving away from dollar dominance. If Trump indeed pursues Shelton's vision in 2026, it would not only be a counter to BRICS, but also a tacit acknowledgement that the dollar can no longer sustain its reserve role without gold as a foundation. This raises critical questions for investors. If gold is revalued sharply higher, not only would it reprice the global monetary system, but it would also alter the investment landscape in profound ways. Silver, often overlooked, would become indispensable, both as a store of value and as a core industrial input for the very technologies, renewable energy, semiconductors, and electrification, that define the future. Mining equities, currently underappreciated, could become some of the best-performing assets of the next decade. Yet, one must also consider the risks. A deliberate dollar devaluation would erode purchasing power for American households and create political turbulence. The balance between restoring competitiveness and containing inflation would be delicate. Nevertheless, as Schectman and Maguire underscore, the trajectory is becoming clearer. Gold will play a central role in whatever comes next, whether as a backstop for treasuries, as BRICS settlement currency, or as the neutral asset bridging rival monetary blocks. For investors, the message is simple but urgent. The timeline may be debated, but the trend is undeniable. The world is preparing for a monetary reset built on gold. Positioning in precious metals now, before these structural changes become official policy, may be one of the most strategic decisions of this generation. If you found this analysis valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The next few years could define not only the future of gold and silver, but the very architecture of the global financial system. Stay informed, stay prepared, and I'll see you in the next episode.